Today I want to show you guys my latest PC I've been working on for the last couple of days. It will cost you around $800 if you decide to build it yourself. It's got the latest Ryzen 3600 running on liquid cooling and a GTX 1660. I benchmarked it in 9 of the most popular games in both 1080 and 1440 to give you a solid idea what to expect here. If you want to jump over to the benchmark right away, you'll find the timestamp for that down in the video description. But what I can say is, based on how this PC performs in some of the most popular games right now, you should be able to max out most games in 1080, and 1440 is also possible, though you might have to fine-tune the settings a bit to reach a satisfying 60 FPS. For more details about each specific PC part as well as the most recent pricing, you find that down in the video description. And without no further ado, let's go over each PC part and let's start with the processor. So with the launch of 3rd gen Ryzen, AMD managed to outperform themselves again with Zen 2 and 7nm FinFET. We're getting more cores and high clock speeds and IPC than ever before. And so when I started to think about making an $800 PC based on the feedback from you guys, picking the 3600 for this build felt like a no-brainer. This processor comes in at just under $200. It's a 6-core and 12-thread part with a clock speed of 3.6. I was as surprised as you were when I started testing this, and it turns out in some games, CSGO being one of them, it is not that much slower than the Intel's Core i9 9900K, a $500 processor, and so being able to get this much gaming performance for its compelling price tag makes this a winner for anyone that want to build a budget gaming PC right now. The Ryzen 3600 also comes boxed with a cooler, and while this cooler actually does a pretty good job of keeping the temperatures in place, it won't really allow the processor to reach the boost frequencies that often, and the way the Ryzen is designed by AMD, it relies a lot on the temperatures. And with 3rd gen Ryzen, AMD implemented a feature into these processors, what is known as PBO or Precision Boost Overdrive, which is an automated overclocking feature. And with the stock cooler, it doesn't leave much headroom for PBO or Precision Boost Overdrive to run at higher clock speeds, and therefore I decided to throw in a liquid cooler, and this is what the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 fixes. With lower temperatures, the processor is now able to run at high clock speed for a lot longer as a result, giving us more frames a second in CPU demanding games. For around $65, it's one of the cheapest IO solutions out there. Again, this is the 240 radiator, but Arctic also sells a 280mm radiator and a 360 as well. For more information about this specific cooler, have a look in the video description. Moving on to the motherboard, so currently I'm demonstrating this on the Asus Crosshair 6 with updated BIOS to support the 3rd gen Ryzen, but since 3rd gen Ryzen won't run on any motherboards below the X570 without a proper BIOS update first, you're gonna need an older Ryzen processor to update the BIOS before getting the 3rd gen Ryzen to work. So although this motherboard supports USB flashback that lets you update the BIOS without having to install a CPU first, this motherboard is still an option. At first I was thinking of recommending this motherboard, but since I know from feedback, I know it can be a bit overwhelming to some people to do this update, and so therefore instead I'm gonna recommend you to pick up the MSI B450 Gaming Plus Max, which comes in at right under $100 with added 3rd gen Ryzen support right out of the box. And this main board from MSI comes with all the bells and whistles similar to this Asus board. You're gonna be able to overclock the 3600 if you want to do so also, although activating PBO or Precision Boost Overdrive will most definitely be enough in most cases. But yeah, in case you want to pick up the motherboard I'm demonstrating on, you find that link also in the video description. So let's look at the graphics card then. So with around $800 to spend, at first I was looking at the Radeon RX 5700, but with the price tag of over $300 it is a bit over budget, so that leaves us with the Vega 56 or the 1660. I ended up picking the GeForce 1660 or the 1660 Ti in case you wanna spend a bit more for the graphics card. Now there is about $60 between these two, and I decided to benchmark both cards so that you get a better idea what to expect for these $60. Now the GeForce GTX 1660 is Nvidia's latest graphics card in a GTX GeForce branding, featuring the 12nm Turing architecture and GDDR5 memory. If you opt for the 1660 Ti, you get GDDR6, which is a bit faster, coming in at $213 for the Adventures card from MSI. This is right now one of the cheapest 1660 models on the market. Ventures is by no means a cheap model. It's got a pretty beefy cooler with dual fans blowing on an aluminum heatsink, keeping the temperatures in place, and this is definitely one of the quieter cards out there. And on the back you also find a nice looking backplate. In case you have a bit more to spend, you have the option of picking up the 1660 Ti for about $60 more. And to answer whether these $60 are worth it or not, I'll leave that for the gaming benchmark section. For RAM, I went with this dual 8GB kit from Corsair. Now, although this isn't BDI memory sticks, BDI sticks are known for being in particularly good with Ryzen, I am still able to overclock these to 3600 up from the 3200 MHz which they are rated for, and so I highly recommend these. Very stable and not that pricey. Jumping over to the SSD, I picked up this 500GB one. It is cheap and fast. Keep in mind though, in case you're planning on having a lot of games installed, I highly recommend adding a hard drive as well, as these 500GB will fill up rather quickly. Now as for the power supply, I went with this 650 watt unit. It's got 80 plus bronze efficiency and it's got a bit of extra headroom in case you want to upgrade the system with a beefier graphics card later down the road. And as for the case, I went with this, the Corsair Crystal 460X, which is a mid-tower case with two sides of tempered glass, and we got three 120mm RGB equipped fans in the front. I think Corsair has done a great job with this one. It's got dust filters in every air intake, plenty of space for longer graphics cards and long power supplies, and on the back you find 3 spots for SSDs, and you can even mount 2 mechanical hard drives in the front bottom if you want as well. As for liquid cooling, technically you can mount up to a 360 radiator in the top. However, in our case, because of the motherboard heatsink being quite large on this Asus Crosshair, only a 250mm radiator is able to fit, and so for bigger radiators you definitely want to have that in mind. Now, apart from expandability, airflow is without a doubt the 460X main pros, and with 3 included fans you're getting plenty of air all the time, and when connecting them to the motherboard you can let the system control them for you and only let them spin up when they need to. But in case you find 3 fans like this being a bit too much airflow, I highly recommend having a look at the H500i from NZXT. This case got the same level of quality, but it's $50 cheaper, coming in just under $99 on Amazon. I'll link it up down below if you want to take a look at it. Now let's look at the numbers here. So as for the benchmark, we can see that the GTX 1660 Ti on average is about 10 to 15% faster than the 1660, and if you think about overclocking the 1660 a bit, you're more than likely you're gonna be able to close that gap, though as always overclocking the 1660 Ti will give you more performance as well. And so whether these $60 are worth it or not is up to you. So if you decide to opt for the 1660 Ti for this build, you're paying $925 right now, and if you decide to go for the 1660, we're getting a price tag of $865. Now if you decide you don't want this much airflow, you can pick up this H510i, which gives you a grand total of just over $800. That wraps up this video. In case you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'm gonna do my best to help you guys out. In the meantime, watch either of these 2 videos for more awesome content. Thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time, have an awesome day, alright?